Right, good morning everybody, and welcome to the Chambers Wales Investing in Your People, the theme of upskilling. You're all very welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. I know there are still people joining us as I speak, but time is an important factor, so let's respect your diaries as well. Delighted to have you on board. The whole debate around skills is so important. It's a challenge and an opportunity for government, it's a challenge and an opportunity for industry, and it's a challenge and an opportunity for education. And I'm delighted to say that we've got the perfect balance of all of that here with us this morning to provoke this debate and to draw from it some conclusions that we hope will help us all learn and move forward. Skills never more important than as we come out of the pandemic, which has been plaguing us for some time, and also try and navigate our way through the additional impacts of Brexit and the potential of some form of recession as a result of both. So delighted this morning that, or this afternoon, that our event is being chaired by Louise Casella. Louise, obviously Director of the Open University for Wales, and has been an integral part of the skills programme for the Welsh Government. Two academics, Professor Brian Morgan, which name will be known to many of you as Director of Creative Leadership at Cardiff Metropolitan University, but also Louise Bright, Director of Research at the University of South Wales. And then two from industry, Lorenzo Angelucci, who many will know from his frequent BBC representations, normally speaking to the reporter Brian Meakin, who always wears that hat. And then Richard Selby, who is director and founder of ProSteel Engineering. But first and above all, we're delighted to be joined by Minister Skates. As we all know, as part of his enormous portfolio, the Minister carries skills as part of that. I'll make no apologies for the fact that the Minister may disappear somewhere during the next 20 minutes or so, but he'll share his wisdom with us, but respecting the fact that he has left the Senate to join us for a few minutes, and we'll go back in to a plenary directly after this. Minister, we're delighted to have you with us. Thank you very much for your time, and please share your knowledge.
Well, thanks so much, Paul, for inviting me to join you today. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you, and I am sorry that it's fallen on a day when I unfortunately have oral questions in the chamber, and so, as you say, I won't be able to stay for the full session. But I'd like to thank everybody else who has kindly taken the time to join us for this important occasion, because this last year has been the most difficult, most challenging that I think many of us have ever known. And though the work of combating the virus is by no means over, it is important for us to look forward and to take time to consider the work of recovery, and specifically to where the Welsh Government's focus should be in regards to supporting individuals and the skills that they need in a rapidly changing economic landscape. Now, we do know for sure that the better people's skills, the better their chances are of obtaining and securing rewarding employment. And we also know that for employers, a labour force of skilled and work-ready individuals gives them the chance to innovate, to grow, and to take advantage of new opportunities. A skilled and educated workforce will therefore help Wales to grow the grounded, high-value, innovative, and knowledge-based businesses that we know we're going to need in the rapidly changing economic environment post-COVID. And from the outset of the pandemic, universities and further education colleges have really stepped up to the plate in thinking through these challenges of the future. They've used their resources, their expertise, they've used their facilities, both to support the response to COVID and also to think about the recovery. And I've certainly appreciated the output of that work and the engagement that I've had as Economy Minister about those challenges of tomorrow, about the economy that we need to build after COVID and Brexit, about the challenges and the opportunities of remote working for an economy like Wales that has been impacted by 4 decades of deindustrialization, and about the challenges of new employment, of lifelong learning, of climate change, of technological disruption, of globalization, together with the myriad of other policy questions that fall out of these last few difficult months. So the pandemic has highlighted the important role of higher and further education institutions. So there is no doubt about that, and they will play an incredibly important role in answering the difficult questions about the future workforce and economy of Wales, and how we reach the best possible prospects for all individuals. And I think entrepreneurship will, of course, be central to our future. And graduate startups is an area where Wales performs particularly well. Universities have played a key part in driving, nurturing, and encouraging an entrepreneurial culture, working alongside entrepreneurs, businesses, and government to develop a cohesive system that supports graduates to start and to thrive in business. And I'm sure people will be aware of the recent OECD report, Future World of Work 2020, that found the new generation of citizens require such skills, not just strong academic skills, but also curiosity, imagination, entrepreneurship, resilience, and really importantly as well, empathy. They need confidence and determination to create their own employment and to manage their careers in new ways. And the development of entrepreneurial skills is not only relevant to meeting the increasing aspiration of young people to start a business, but the importance of those skills in the workplace, applying important skills in the workplace, whether in the public sector or in our SME communities. And keeping pace with the changes in technology will be a significant challenge, which will bring about new opportunities for Wales. Over 3/4 of jobs require some level of digital skill or expertise, for example. And digital is clearly an area, therefore, where we will need to see rapid change and further investment. And it was just over a year ago that Professor Phil Brown published his final report into the impact of digital innovation on the economy and the future of work in Wales. And that review provided a sense of how digital innovation and technologies will impact on the economy and work in the future, and what we need to do to proactively embrace opportunities to make sure that the transition to a digital economy is a positive one for as many citizens as possible. Now, COVID-19, if we just go back to it for a moment, has delivered multiple shocks to the economy. And we're already seeing the impact in terms of unemployment, underemployment, and economic inactivity. But we were able to step up with an immediate response to the COVID pandemic as a Welsh government. We put in place £2 billion package of support for businesses. And that support is in addition to the UK government support. It means that we have in Wales the most generous package of support for businesses anywhere in the United Kingdom. It includes £500 million set within the Economic Resilience Fund, and this fund has provided crucial financial support for businesses, alongside the support available from the Development Bank. It's helped to provide support and protection for more than 141,000 people and more than 13,000 businesses at a time when they needed it the most. And alongside financial investment, Business Wales has been there to provide advice and guidance to support our employers and business community throughout this period, with opportunities to access advice, to review cash flow and financial planning, HR advice, opportunities for diversification or developing digital capability, through to improving business survival and also seizing opportunities to innovate and to grow. And we remain committed, absolutely committed to maintaining this active partnership role that we've developed through the pandemic and to take it into recovery, a partnership between business, between citizens, between trade unions, between institutions in Wales that have proven so very important in supporting people and businesses. We are also guaranteeing people support through our COVID commitment, and that COVID commitment includes the national rollout of the Personal Learning Account Programme, which is an important part of our approach to employability and skills, and that's going to help us reskill and upskill employed individuals that have been hit incredibly hard by COVID-19 through unemployment or inactivity. And new accounts will give us support for individuals so that they can actually meet their hopes and aspirations in the future, so that they can actually build the prospect of securing rewarding, decent work. And I think this is support and hope that perhaps previous generations of individuals in Wales who've been at the sharp end of technological and industrial change before possibly didn't have. And it's £40 million to support the COVID commitment. Welsh Government, alongside this, has also provided over £40 million to help universities this financial year, support which has included £10 million for student hardship, importantly also for mental health support and for student unions. And we've also committed an additional £40 million through that COVID commitment to ensure that we get as many apprenticeships as possible secured during these difficult times. I think the real value, though, of today's session is discussing and understanding what together we can do to support the economy, the communities and the individuals who will have to face the very real changes that we are now seeing. How we can build back better so that we're not only withstanding the forces of change that we're now facing, but that in doing so, we're tackling some of those incredibly deep underlying structural challenges that we face. The climate crisis, for example, and poverty and technological change and the legacy of more than 4 decades of deindustrialization. And certainly as we do that work, I think about my dad. My dad was a shot and steel worker in the 1980s. He was one of the many thousands of people in North East Wales to lose employment when that industry and the wider economy went through a period of profound change and disruption. And I think about all of those workers in my region of North East Wales who today face similar challenges brought by Brexit, COVID, and the impacts that it's wrought. So let us resolve today that we will stand by this generation in a new and different way, that we will work together with and alongside them and to help them face the future with confidence and, crucially, with hope. Thank you, Paul. Back to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Minister. I think it was fascinating to hear that, and really good to hear you talk about hope as one of the words that you used. And I think it's really important we do focus on that and on building a kind of a hopeful future for people. But that takes hard work and takes quite pragmatic work on the ground to make things happen. Can I just lob a question in to you?
Of course.
And you were talking about the difficulties that you saw in your constituency and around North Wales. And I think one of the things that Chambers Wales members will really want to know about is how you're going to ensure that high quality training in a wide range of subjects gets to people throughout Wales, and investments not centred around a particular region. Traditionally, Southwest Valleys areas have been looked at as needing the most, but this is an issue that's hit the whole of Wales. And how are you going to ensure we get investment out across Wales?
That's such an important question, and certainly as a North Wales member, I'm constantly asked, will we get the same support as other areas of Wales? Well, we established Working Wales as a single point of entry for anybody looking for employability or training support or advice, and that's available to all citizens right across Wales. But crucially important, I think, was the Economic Action Plan that we published 2 or 3 years ago, because that signalled a very clear move towards regional place-based economic development. We established regional teams within the department. We established chief regional officers with the purpose of ensuring that local authorities work with Welsh Government better, that we align our support, that we are all putting our shoulders to the wheel and ensuring that we are working for our citizens together. That place-based approach, I think, has also been reflected across other government departments, and that's why I've got great confidence in saying that there will be support available for all citizens, regardless of where they are in Wales. And indeed, we're already seeing some of the support that's been made available achieve some great outcomes in parts of Wales through schemes such as the Shared Apprenticeship Scheme, which has benefited in particular rural parts of North Wales. And as we look towards the full utilisation of that COVID commitment, we'll be working with people who were perhaps and continue to be furthest from the labour market through the creation, for example, of a barriers fund for young people to be able to draw down grants to start up their own businesses, allied to advice from Business Wales. And the reach now of Working Wales, of Business Wales, of the Development Bank is incredibly impressive, and alongside, as I said, those regional teams that we've established within government and that stronger regional working as well within local government. And I do think we have some of the very best further education colleges and universities in the UK in terms of being able to respond to community needs. I don't think there's another part of the UK that has a family of further education institutions and higher education institutions that reflect their communities better than ours do here in Wales.
I'd have to agree with you on that one, of course, particularly as an All Wales institution,
yes.
but also somebody who, as an institution that works with all those FE colleges and the universities across Wales, and has experience working in an institution that works across the whole UK, and where people look enviously actually across at Wales at the level of collaboration that we employ here to make things happen. And it's interesting hearing you talk about that change in approach. And I just think, well, just as a further follow-up to you, are you really hoping to see more community-led strategies coming forward now, more coming up from as part of that place-based approach, that you're looking to see that much more distributed approach to this?
Absolutely, yeah. And some of the work, valuable work through the Values Task Force, has shown us how we can empower communities and citizens within communities to take charge of the future of their environments and their prospects. We also recently outlined, my colleague Jeremy Miles outlined our proposals for the replacement of EU funding, which would see a degree of funding go straight to communities to do just that, to empower them to plan for their future, to prioritise issues and developments and potentially infrastructure and skills provision within their communities, recognising that people don't want to have things done to them, they want to have things done with them, working together. They don't want to be tasked, they want to be asked to actually take forward proposals for their future. They want a greater degree of control over their community, over their own destiny, and that's what we're trying to do with that new place-based economic development approach and with our proposals for the replacement of EU funding.
That's great. Thanks, Minister. I know you can't stay with us for the rest of the discussion, but I think everybody will be really pleased to have heard you talk in that way about the future and get that agenda laid out for us to respond to. So thank you very much for your time this morning. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next, I'm going to move the session forward shortly with opening up with the questions that panelists are ready to give opinions on and to debate with you. And can I encourage everybody to put their questions in the chat panel, and if we can't get to all of them this afternoon, we will seek to kind of address them, and Chambers Wales will get back to you on more specific questions with a response later on. We've also got a poll, and the poll questions will be appearing on your screens, and we're going to just give you a couple of minutes to respond to those poll questions before we go into our discussion with panelists. So these should now be up on your screen, and I'll just remind our panelists and myself that we can't vote, but it's over to our audience. And can I ask you to just have a look through that, give it a bit of thought, scroll down, and we'll give you the answers to this at the end of the session today. So we're just going to leave that on the screen for a minute or two for you to respond to. So there's 3 questions there about the need to improve, how the need to improve skill sets has changed, the importance of innovation in your organisation, and the most important factor when considering improving skills in your business. So multiple choice answers there, and we'll come back with the responses at the end. So we'll just let you work your way through that. Great. Okay, right. So that's brilliant. So let's go then. And I'm going to kick off. And what I won't do is introduce each of our panelists directly, but I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves as they answer for the first time and say a little about themselves and the position that they're answering from. So perhaps I can start by asking our panelists, and kind of you've heard the Minister speak. You've obviously got you'll be planning and thinking about your responses as we move forward. So where do you think the greatest challenge for your organisation is in addressing the skills needs in a post-COVID economy, in a post-Brexit economy indeed? So can I start on that with you, Lorenzo, and perhaps you can kick off for us on that question about where the greatest challenge rests for your organisation.
So good afternoon, my name is Lorenzo Angelucci. I'm the CEO of Transcend Packaging. So we are a food packaging company. It's now 3 years old, and we manufacture mainly paper straws and disposable packaging. Our focus is sustainability. So that is the challenge for us. So we need to be different from the rest of the market, and differentiation requires investment in new technology, in new material, in R&D, and obviously the workforce has to follow this direction. So the main focus for us is to train our own resources, because there is a challenge in the market in terms of skills. So the level of skills that are on the market now needs to be trained, needs to be brought to a different level. So for example, manufacturing now, even at operative level, is integrated with finance. They need to have a knowledge of digital, they have knowledge of PLC, programming. It's not like what used to be. And because obviously Wales is developed country, but competing on a global market now, you really don't want to manufacture commodities too much, because Asia is the best producer and the cheapest. The only way to be strong and survive and grow and be successful is to differentiate, to be different in terms of level of technology, so high tech, sustainability, efficiency, data gathering. All of these are necessity now for companies that trade in the market and manufacturing in Wales. Obviously, Brexit has also shifted more focus to manufacturing, because the UK needs to be more independent from the rest of the world, in particular Europe. So we have a gap of manufacturing skills, in particular for this type of new skills that has been required. Also, and I finish here, the COVID has also changed the way we work. We used to have more office staff, now we have work from home. You can be efficient working from home if you are familiar with the technology, or you can organize meeting remotely. It looks simple, but sometimes it's not. So all these require an adjustment, and time is of essence, because the market is challenging the same way. So I think that's where the investment should be from government. Development Bank of Wales has to invest more on the Welsh enterprises. So that is the direction of travel I see.
Okay. Thanks, Lorenzo. I'm going to go to Richard next. Richard, where do you see the greatest challenges?
Hi Louise, I'm Richard Selby, Director and Co-founder of ProSteel Engineering. We fabricate and construct steelwork all over the UK, and more recently we export around the world. We came into the market about 8 years ago, and as Lorenzo was saying, looked to disrupt what was going on and come up with different solutions to our customers so that we could differentiate ourselves. And largely, our success through the pandemic has been being able to offer our goods and services to different opportunities like online retail, and identify how our products and services would be useful to them, whilst some of our more traditional offerings haven't been needed so much. And we've had an issue for a while really as a steelwork fabricator, where we had an aging workforce. So we knew that we were having a problem in terms of enticing young people into heavy industry, which seemed less attractive. And throughout the pandemic, we've actually used the time that we've had where we're not traveling around to meetings and events and seeing customers, to look more inwardly at our business and develop our staff that we have here and our processes so that we can streamline our costs. But also we've managed to work with the Foundation Economy Challenge Fund to develop our own traineeship in-house, which has been a massive benefit in terms of not having to send some of our new recruits out to colleges. And for example, a couple of our apprenticeships have had a number of spells of isolation because of incidences at college, which we're now managing to prevent by doing a lot more training in-house. So I think adaptation and agility is really key as we move forward. And I think that openness to collaborate moving forward and the confidence to work with people and understand that there's something in it for all of us and not someone's going to do better than someone else is really the way that we will need to move forward with government, institutions and business.
Thanks, Richard. Louise, some challenges there for universities and FE colleges then, if we need to innovate and change in a different way. Can I come to you next then on this question about where next?
Absolutely. Thanks, Louise. My name's Dr. Louise Bright. I'm Director of Research and Business Engagement at the University of South Wales. Really interesting conversation. And I think one of the challenges for FE, for further education and higher education alike is the perception of what we do. So I guess most of us, if asked, would say, well, you take young people out of schools, you develop them for 3 years, they come out of university or FE and, hopefully they're upskilled and ready for the workplace. Of course, that's important and that's a fundamental key part of our mission. But actually, it's much, much broader than that. We've begun to have a conversation around a changing economy, a digital economy. Some jobs will disappear, but actually the reality is that most jobs will change. So we will need to move to a model where we are upskilling our workforce regularly. And we should be really looking at testing recruitment, not only employees' ability to have a particular skill set, but how readily adaptable and how ready they are to really kind of embrace change, because change isn't going to go away. So I think universities have got a real job to do to think about how they do that upskilling, that lifelong learning. And the pandemic, I think, has given us a bit of an opportunity to accelerate where we were going with this. We've now proved that a blended learning or an online learning approach works. It works for our learners when we do it well. Part of our brand issue, I think, as universities is that actually we have got an awful lot to give to people who are already in employment. It doesn't mean they have to fall out of employment and do a 3-year degree. We can do short, sharp interventions that make a difference. So a really good example of that is a program that we've done called Changemaker Program, really as a direct result of the pandemic, helping organisations to become more agile, helping their workforces to be flexible. This was really a shot in the dark for us because it's entirely online, but we've learned a lot by doing it, by having small communities online, learning flexibly and learning in different ways. So we've got a podcast series that, again, it was just a trial from our perspective. We've got over 5,000 listens from people in 52 different countries. So all of a sudden, our reach is broadened. I think the Minister mentioned listening. We shouldn't just do things to our society. We should be listening. And one of the reasons that University of South Wales enjoys its relationship with Chambers Wales is it allows us to engage with organisations that you're all representing today. We want to listen, we want to be responsive, and we want to be able really to open the door to universities because we've got talented staff, we've got talented students, and we've got first-class facilities, and we've got ways of really making it easy for organisations to support you. Thanks,
Louise. Brian, would you like to take a kind of view from the leadership perspective on this, about how should we be leading through these challenges ahead?
Yeah, just to add one or two things, because the other speakers have really covered most of the ideas there and covered them very well. I think What we find when we sort of ask people, and as Louise says, that's the best way forward, to ask people. And we went out on a big survey recently to businesses in Wales and asked them about skills. And what transpired was that there are two big gaps, if you like, in the system. One is that the entry-level skills, I think Richard mentioned those earlier on, is the entry-level skills of sort of level 2 to 4, where businesses out there are finding it really difficult to find the staff that they want, find the skills that they need to grow the business. There's a huge problem out there with those entry-level skills, people who are left school but have sort of been around for about 2 or 3 years and need those sort of key skills to help small businesses to expand. So there's an area there that we really need to focus on, and I think the apprenticeship levy should be absolutely focused on that. That's absolutely key. And funnily enough, as you mentioned, Louise, the other area, funnily enough, is at the level 5 to 7 level, where you have strategic skills, leadership skills, those managerial skills that are going to make the best use, of course, of the entry-level skills. There's also a big gap at that level in terms of what's available for developing those skills within businesses. And can I say here, you know, I found the minister's talk very interesting, but I noticed he skipped over things like apprenticeships. You know, he mentioned them once. Now, funnily enough, in Wales, and only in Wales, you can't use the apprenticeship levy for level 7, which are the leadership strategic skills development that we found that we really need in Wales. So there's a huge problem there. I don't think we're using that apprenticeship levy in Wales to any great extent, and I'd be very interested to hear from people on this conference as to how they found accessing that levy.
Good. Shall we move to apprenticeship? Let's Brian's provoked us there. Richard and Lorenzo, but so go to you two and ask really. Do you think the apprenticeship model in Wales is working as well as it could? You know, is it delivering for your businesses? Lorenzo?
Yes, so apprenticeship. We have colleagues here that are on apprenticeship. It looks, in particular with the local college, near Caerphilly area where we are. So we have a very good cooperation, but in terms of bureaucracy access, not as fluid as we would have liked. So I think perhaps there is a room of improvement there. But I think this is one of the most important tools for companies like us to have access to. Because at the end of the day, the direction of travel I explained before is innovation, technology, digital. Young generation is by nature more prone to this. I can tell you because my daughters are definitely more practics, and in fact I ask their help sometimes because I am a little bit like a dinosaur of technology. But at the end of the day, that is the way forward. So young generation apprenticeship, we believe in that. We have in fact in our company apprentice. So yeah, for me it's improvement on the bureaucracy should be, in my opinion, the focus for the authorities, and obviously as much as finance as possible, especially now with this COVID pressure, it's definitely welcome.
Richard, you talked about bringing more of your traineeship work in-house and focusing more on within your business. Are you going to continue with that post-COVID?
Yeah, well, we'll be working, I think, picking the right training for the right people, really. I think what we found with the apprenticeship approach, which has worked very well for us, but it has provided some challenges in so much as trying to get some young people to colleges, and that logistical issue of where we're based and where the young people live and how they can, one of them was getting 2 buses to get to a college, and it was just became quite logistical. So that was one challenge. The other issue was within the apprenticeship, we had some issues with recruiting some people onto them because of some of the elements of core skills. And what we need is people, potentially a lot of people who can weld, and we needed to find a way of engaging them into the workplace, which was a little bit more practical. So what we've done with our traineeship is really just focus on the, pardon the pun, the nuts and bolts of what we need get them in through the door, get them enthused, give them a qualification at the end of it, and then we can review the next steps, if you like. So very much trying to take a much more targeted approach to how we approach our training and development of entry level, but also throughout the business.
Thanks, Richard. Just to change up a little bit from the apprenticeship question, and I think one of the challenges that we're being asked about in the Q&A area here is the ability to go overseas to get skills and resources on board and scale up very quickly. How can we adapt to be able to do that more about, get the availability of skills in Wales, more awareness of that, be able to use skills from within Wales and take resources from within Wales rather than looking overseas? Is that something that we need to do, or will the overseas market continue to be key to the future? Can I go to Brian on that to start off with?
Yeah, I think I've been involved a little bit in the immigration bill and the impact that that's likely to have. And when you look at it, what's going to happen here is that although there is to some extent more restriction obviously on people coming from Europe, there will be, of course, a much more open door across the piece. So people from outside of the UK, from anywhere now, will be able to come here under certain criteria. And those criteria are quite broad for most of the job vacancies that we're talking about. There are some problems, as we've heard a lot about, in terms of the creative industries. There are some huge problems there. But in the wider scheme, in terms of jobs, both in services and in manufacturing, the availability of overseas talent is not going to be restricted. In fact, it'll open up somewhat, of course, apart from the fact that there won't be complete freedom of movement within the EU. But on a more general scale, immigration will be there. So I think we could be tapping it. But of course, the whole point of the immigration bill is to get us to focus more on upskilling our own workforce and making sure that we have those skills and more of those skills within the UK, and particularly within Wales, that we don't need to actually go outside of the country to acquire them. So I think, we come back to that main problem, which is where are the main skills gaps and how are we going to meet those skills? And Louise was talking about that earlier on. And it's a very important role for the colleges and the universities, but also, of course, and this is the biggest problem, I think, in Wales, we have the lowest amount of investment in upskilling our workforce. I mean, Richard talked about it and Lorenzo talked about it, but you'd be surprised how many companies out there do not have a skills budget or a skills objective in any way to upskill their workforce. That's the biggest area that we need to sort of address in terms of upskilling people and therefore not needing to go outside to seek availability.
So where, can I put the question then to you all? Roles and responsibilities in that, Brian's putting a challenge down there about, companies putting that in their budget, taking responsibility for upskilling within the workforce. Where's the balance on roles and responsibilities there? Louise, we'll come to you first.
I think it's a really interesting question, I think, around upskilling workforce. When organisations are constrained in terms of budget, often staff development is the kind of the easy thing to get rid of. And I think actually, if we were thinking about things strategically, it would be absolutely at a time, where there were financial pressures that we really need to be looking to make sure our staff, our employees are upskilled. So of course, organisations need to take responsibility for this. I think if I look historically, we've enjoyed funding from Europe. And I think organisations have got used to, upskilling, brilliant, I can apply for some funding from the Wales European Funding Office for this. And when that's kind of, that's gone, it's a lot more difficult to kind of get people to upskill their workforces. And I'm not sure, Ken did kind of allude to future funding streams post-Brexit. I'm not sure we're going to really see anything in terms of the scale as we used to enjoy. So there's a responsibility on organisations. I think there's a responsibility on individuals as well. you know, to kind of raise their hand and to demand, you know, to be really kind of saying, this is where I want to go in my career, this is what I need to be successful. And to have that as part of, you know, to be brave and have that as part of a conversation around, you know, deciding on where you're going to work. Do I want to work with this organisation? Are they going to, you know, upskill me to be better, to do the best that I can? So I think it's not an either or, it's a joint responsibility on individuals as employees, as, you know, for employers, and actually for Welsh Government to really think about, you know, how they can support. And of course, you know, we've talked about it, FE and HE have got a role to play here.
Richard, you talked about how you'd taken this period to kind of refocus internally and clearly have invested. So what help, what support are you looking for from elsewhere as you move forward now? Where would you want that support to come in, and in what shape?
I think what we really want is to get to the position which we've talked about for the last few years, is a demand-led education system where we're looking at, right, what's the economy going to look like? There's a bit of a crystal ball gaze, and I agree, but what's it going to look like? What skills are we going to need? How do we provide those skills? So, you know, we have a good manufacturing sector in Wales. I hope it's enhanced, and I hope we bring a lot of renewable energy companies into Wales for the green recovery. But how do we get those skill sets, and how do we get young people to aspire to want to learn those skills at an early enough age? And what's the age that we need to be talking to these young people so that they've got it in their mind that, okay, if I work hard at this, I'll have a good job when I leave school. And I think we've got to start earlier to do that. So that's what I want to see is, you know, all I need is somebody coming through the door who wants to have a job and wants to get on. We can do the rest with them. And I just think we just need to start talking earlier about what's available, and not just necessarily train people to do with skills that aren't required in the economy.
Lorenzo, do you think we get that skills pipeline definition right then in Wales?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, company like us, we have in 2.5 years, we went from 0 to 200 employees. And we went from, you know, 4th generation of paper straw making machine technology. So from a bicycle to a Fiat 500 to a BMW, now we are having a Ferrari. So when you have a Ferrari, you need a pilot. So the operator is no more, let's say, influenced by the machine, but he has an influence of the machine. And this type of skills, you know, as you can appreciate, has been a challenge for us to go so vertical growth and complete change of skills in charge of these technologies. So what I think it would be very nice to see more proactivity from colleges. So they have to, you know, at the moment, the youngest have to, you know, search for a placement, but it would be nice to see college also be taking care of this, minimizing paperwork and, you know, promoting finance front, not only for basic skills, but also for enhanced skills. I think that is no more a nice to have, I think it's a necessity. It would position Wales in the race on a global level. Otherwise, you know, there will be other preferences. And obviously, you know, Brexit has catalyzed this, has made manufacturing more essential, but the local workforce are not so much flexible. They are prone to development for sure, like, you know, everybody, and very strong basic skill in general, but flexibility is not there. So, you know, it is not so much more a nice to have, it is a necessity, and it is now. That's what we feel and then what we see. You know, especially we are probably, I'm not saying an exception, but we have been in a market which is very dynamic, so we have to do it, otherwise we don't continue. But I think that is going to be the trend ongoing.
So how do we plant those seeds with young people about industry being a great career option? How do we build that expectation of flexibility and that willingness to be flexible? How should the schools, the colleges, the universities be responding to that? Brian, I'm going to come to you first and then go to Louise.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've got a lot to learn from the German dual system. Over in Germany, they integrate school and college-based learning, with work-based practice. There's this real interchange from a very young age, from 15 years plus, whether you're in school, whether you're in your first years in college, you have this work-based practical experience that's linked in with your education. And those vocational skills are seen as absolutely the top level in terms of developing German industry. Now, it's interesting that the Chamber of Commerce over there are the backbone of this vocational training system. The Chamber of Commerce, and I know that the South Wales Chamber is looking at this and with interest. Over there, you have to become a member. It's actually compulsory to become a member of the Chamber of Commerce in your local area, and they are actually at the forefront of developing these vocational skills. So you have an organisation linked with business, developing the skills that link up with the education that you get within the college and within schools. And I think we're really missing a trick here. Because although we now have this apprenticeship system, and I mentioned it earlier on, I don't think it's working properly. It's not something you can just bring in. It's a cultural change, really, that we need to value these vocational skills far more than we do at the moment. And I'm sure Louise will agree with that.
Louise?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of things. I think from University of South Wales perspective, a few years ago, we had some really difficult conversations with employers, particularly around cybersecurity. So we were producing graduates for the cyber industry. We spoke to about 60 organisations who basically said, well, if we take one of your graduates, we have to work on them for at least 6 months until they are useful to us, because you're not giving them the right skills, the right experience. That wasn't nice to hear, but it's actually resulted in us throwing the curriculum out. So as we'd understand, you sit in a classroom, you learn things, you do an exam, and then you get a qualification. For our cyber academy, we work with those cyber organisations, and they give the students real life briefs. So the students are working really with those organisations. They have their own desk. They're expected to come into a workplace. There are no exams. They are assessed by our staff and by those organisations. So we've thrown the curriculum out and done something very different. We started off with 12 students in the first year. I've been in conversations now about finding desks for hundreds of students. And those students are going out into those cyber businesses because they're valuable to them, because they are ready to work from day one. And that's where we need to be with all of our learning for our young people who come out of further education and higher education. I want to pick up Brian's point around culture, vocational qualifications. I've seen it with my own children in school. If you're intelligent, if you're very academic, then the pinnacle is to go to university. If you're not quite as good, then maybe you're better practically, then there's some other things over here, maybe some apprenticeships. There's a real snobbery about it, I think, that still exists in schools, and we have to clear that out of the way, I think, to see a real change. And I think that change needs to happen sooner rather than later.
Okay. Thanks, Louise. Useful, really interesting conversations here. I know we're beginning to get towards the end of the hour that we've got today. Brian, you mentioned earlier one of the skills gaps around leadership. As we were talking about entry, we've talked about entry skills, we've talked about leadership skills as well. And I think one of the questions coming up from the audience really about women in leadership, and how do we develop more on the leadership issues and ensure that women are part of that program as it comes through? How do we make sure that we are building, as we build back better, we have regard to issues of gender and issues of equality in the workforce for the future? So can I start with Lorenzo on that? And I'm going to do a quick run round on that about the issue of women in leadership and seeing how we support a fairer society.
So we apply to a program. We are part of a program called Quality Tech. So we have several colleagues that are under a career advance program. We believe this is very, very effective, and we enjoy being part of this. And we are obviously dealing with organizations like McDonald's, Starbucks, very large groups where this is becoming a requirement of supply, which I think is very, very nice and correct. But we are pleased to say that we applied to this kind of program before these requirements were formalized to us. So, we believe in, diversification, in promoting skills among workforce. We believe that developing our women colleagues will make this company progress faster and prosper. So we are committed to this.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Richard, I'm going to ask you the same question now.
Hi, yeah, well, admittedly, we are terrible in terms of our gender split here, and we have tried very actively to try and recruit females into our industry without success. But it's incumbent on us really to keep trying and to keep reaching out to give opportunities. So part of our recruitment process is we seek out actively and encourage females into the workplace. When we went through our latest trainees recruitment program, out of 30 applicants, we had one female, and she declined to come for interview, which was really disappointing. But I think we need, again, go back to the schools discussion to highlight, to create aspirations, identify that these opportunities are there for the taking, and having a diverse company and diverse leadership can actually improve the business. I think people got to understand that the more widespread views you have around your board table and in your management teams and on the shop floor, the better your organisation will be, and you need to embrace it. Yeah.
Lorenzo, you gave a shout out for Quaritag there, and I think I can see Louise nodding as well as alongside you there. And I think we are very fortunate in Wales to have the resources that Quaritag put at employers' disposal to support the kind of actions that Richard's talking about taking there, that you've been taking. And I have to say that because the Open University won the Quaritag's Fair Play Employer Award this year. So we've used their advice and support to change some of the things that we've done to create a more fair and equitable workforce for the future. So I'm very aware of the time. It's at 1:25. We'd surveyed you all earlier on, and I think we're going to see the results of that survey shortly. I'm just going to ask, here we go. Absolute agreement on the need the increased need to improve skill sets over the last year. That's 84%, overwhelmingly high. Innovation, very much top of the priorities, the need to do things differently. And certainly, Rich and Lorenzo talked so much about that kind of differentiation, that position, that ability to be able to innovate, to preserve your position in the marketplace. And a most important factor when considering improving skills, keeping staff engaged and confident. I think that trumps the others, injecting new ideas into the business. So very much about kind of looking to the future there amongst those on the call, about being aware that keeping your staff engaged, confident, able to innovate is key. So really interesting outcome from the polls there for you all to see. Can I therefore just draw us to a bit of a conclusion this afternoon then, and thank all of you for your involvement, and thank the participants for the questions that they've been pushing through to us as well. The Minister gave us an interesting introduction, some challenges there about being hopeful, about looking to the future, about coming together, very much about place-based innovation in the future as well. If I'm going to give each of the panel 30 seconds for a final remark on this, and just zip around you to ask, what's your takeaway from today that you'd like to share with us. So can I start with Richard? Last quick 30-second round.
I think the one thing we want to take away is this place-based approach, working locally to attract local talent and develop within our own business so that we can be successful in the future.
Great. Louise, can I go to you next?
I think I just highlight the need to kind of listen to each other, and I guess a plea out to everybody, you know, to think of your colleges and universities as partners. They're often large organisations that are really difficult to find their ways around. At our university, we have something called Exchange. So you come to Exchange either virtually nowadays or to an actual front door, and we will help you to find a way for us to be able to kind of support you. That could be placements, research, innovation, business support, CPD. Lots of universities and colleges have this kind of thing now. So just really to say that the support is there, and we need to try and make it really easy for you to access it.
Thanks, Louise. Lorenzo?
Yes, so obviously the world that we used to know a few months ago, is completely changed now. We have a global pandemic, we have Brexit. So the only way forward is to stick together, work in partnership, in team, less bureaucracy, more facts, focus, more flexibility driven organizations, and more financial support. That's the only way, I think, forward for Wales to differentiate from the rest of the market.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lorenzo. And Brian?
Yeah, I think today we've been talking about skills development, we've been talking about innovation, and the polls that we've just been seeing the results of were very, very instructive, because at the end of the day, whether you're talking about either of those issues or productivity, the main driving force there is employee engagement. And I think if we can invest in people, involve people, then the impact on productivity will actually flow through. It's that employee engagement and that work-based training that we talked about earlier on, I think, is going to be the key to the future.
That's fantastic. Can I thank you all then for being such a great panel and for engaging in it? And can I just also ask those of you attending online, if you've still got questions, if you've still got views, do send them into Chambers Wells, and we'll compile that and compile some responses to that. So thank you all very much for today, and I'm sure Chambers will be in touch with further events and activities for you to engage with. Thank you all. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.